Do you agree with your employer that the Family Research Council is comparable to the Ku Klux Klan or the Nazi Party?
Senator, as I shared with your colleagues earlier, I can't comment to that. I'm in the legal department.
Well, why can't you? I'm asking if you agree with them. You work for them. That's what they say. Their hateful rhetoric led to an attempted murder. Do you agree with them? You went to work for them knowing that their hate had led to this violence. Do you agree with that or not?
I went to work for the SPLC to help lead its voting rights practice group, and that is.
Do you agree with your employer?
Senator, again,
So you're going to refuse to answer that?
All right, you just saw that clip. If your jaw isn't on the floor right now, you haven't been paying attention. That right there is Senator Ted Cruz doing what very few politicians actually have the guts to do, pressing a judicial nominee with direct, uncomfortable, and absolutely necessary questions. And what did we get in return? Deflection. Evasion. A whole lot of I cannot speak to that. Now, before we dive into the full video, I want you to notice something. Cruz didn't come to that hearing to score cheap points. Cruz came with receipts. Real history, real violence, real consequences. Cruz brought up the 2012 shooting at the Family Research Council, where a gunman literally used the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate group list to pick his targets. That is not a talking point. That is a documented, court-evidenced fact. And yet the nominee, Ms. Abudo, sat there and refused to say whether she agreed or disagreed with her own employer's characterization of the Family Research Council as equivalent to the KKK and the Nazi Party. This is someone being considered for a lifetime appointment to the federal bench, and she won't give a straight yes or no. We're going to watch the full thing together, and I promise you, it only gets more revealing from here. If this kind of content matters to you, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and share this video because this conversation needs to reach more people. Let's get into it.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the past year and a half, we've seen a pattern from the Biden administration of nominating ideological zealots to our courts. A moment ago, Ms. Abudo, in answering questions from Senator Lee, you said you understood the difference between an advocate and a judge. Well, I'm sure you do. You've never served as a judge. You've spent your entire life as an advocate. And as an advocate on the extreme left, there has been a pattern of nominee after nominee that have been extreme zealots, but I have to say your nomination, when I look at your record, I find deeply concerning. The last 3 years you've served at the Southern Poverty Law Center. The Southern Poverty Law Center is a hateful and extreme place. And their hate, among other things, has led to horrific violence. I'm speaking in particular about the 2012 shooting at the Family Research Council here in Washington. There, a gunman sought to make a political statement by shooting as many members of the Family Research Council as possible, and he sought to smear their faces with Chick-fil-A sandwiches after he murdered them. He was only stopped due to the heroic efforts of the Family Research Council employee, Leo Johnson, whose courage saved many lives that day. The evidence in the case indicated that the shooter had assembled his targets by visiting the Southern Poverty Law Center website of so-called hate groups, where the Southern Poverty Law Center equated the Family Research Council with true bigoted hate groups like the KKK and the Nazi Party. Do you agree with your employer that the Family Research Council is equivalent to the KKK or the Nazi Party?
Senator Cruz, I would first respectfully state that although, yes, I have spent a big chunk of my career as a civil rights lawyer, early on in my career, I was actually a staff attorney with the 11th Circuit. So I started my career and my understanding of the legal profession from the position of being and representing the court to some extent and making
but being a staff attorney is not a judge. So could you answer the question, please?
Well, in terms of the...
Do you agree with your employer that the Family Research Council is comparable to the Ku Klux Klan or the Nazi Party?
Senator, as I shared with your colleagues earlier, I can't comment to that. I'm in the legal department.
Well, why can't you? I'm asking if you agree with them. You work for them. That's what they say. Their hateful rhetoric led to an attempted murder. Do you agree with them? You went to work for them knowing that their hate had led to this violence. Do you agree with that or not?
I went to work for the SPLC to help lead its voting rights practice group, and that is.
Do you agree with your employer?
Senator, again,
So you're going to refuse to answer that?
Senator, again, I can't speak to work that I did not do.
You can say whether you agree with it or not, correct?
I cannot speak to work, Senator Cruz, that I did not do.
Do you agree with the statement the Family Research Council is equivalent to the Ku Klux Klan or the Nazi Party? Yes or no?
I cannot speak to a statement wherein I played no role in the research or the writing
Why not?
or the publication because I did not, Senator Cruz, respectfully.
I didn't ask if you did it. You went to work for them. Do you agree with them? You're refusing to answer that. Let's move on. What is a white supremacist?
Senator, my general understanding is that a white supremacist is someone who hates people simply based on the color of their skin.
Okay, your current employer has labeled 3 members of this committee, myself, Senator Hawley, and Senator Blackburn, as white supremacists. Do you agree with that characterization?
Senator, I have never referred to you or any member of this committee
Has the
as
Southern
that way.
Poverty Law Center done so?
I'm not familiar with the exhaustive list of policymakers that might have been researched and profiled by another department within the organization that I'm
How many
not.
members of the United States Senate do you believe are white supremacists?
Senator, again, sitting here before you, I would not call any single member of Congress.
But you're proud to work for an organization that does.
I'm proud to do voting rights work on behalf of an organization that provides pro bono counsel to individuals, especially low-income individuals.
So let me
living in
ask
the
you,
South.
how could anyone who is not on the radical left, how could someone who's pro-life, how could someone who's conservative, how can someone who's religious have any degree of confidence if they were to appear in a court with you as a judge? You've spent a lifetime working for groups that smear half this country as white supremacists and Klansmen. That is offensive. My dad came as an immigrant to this country from Cuba with nothing. That is hateful language. How could any litigant expect to get a fair shot if you were a judge, given your advocacy and history of extreme advocacy?
Because, Senator Cruz, my father came to this country with nothing in his pocket as well.
But why don't you give that grace to others?
I do, Senator. That's what my religious freedom, my free speech work, my voting rights work, my criminal justice work, Senator Cruz, all of that work that I've done represents my commitment to making sure that all people at least have equal access to justice and equal justice under law.
Thank you.
Senator Hawley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to the nominees, and thanks for being here. Ms. Abudo, if I could just start with you. You said to Senator Ossoff just a couple of minutes ago that you believe in the First Amendment, right?
Okay, we've seen the whole thing. Let's talk about it. First, whether you like Ted Cruz or not, what Cruz did in that hearing room was the job. That is exactly what a confirmation hearing is supposed to look like. Hard questions, direct accountability, no softballs. Because a federal judgeship is a lifetime appointment. Once Ms. Abudo gets confirmed, she's there potentially for decades, ruling on cases that affect ordinary Americans. So her record, her associations, her beliefs, all of it is fair game, and all of it should be scrutinized. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center is really the heart of this entire exchange. Ms. Abudo is clearly proud of her voting rights work there. And look, voting rights work is important. Nobody is disputing that. But an organization is more than one department. When Cruz pointed out that the SPLC labeled the Family Research Council alongside the KKK and the Nazi Party, and that a gunman used that very label to justify a shooting, that is a serious indictment of the organization as a whole. Here's what really got me. Ms. Abudo's response was essentially, I can't comment because I didn't do that specific work. But Cruz wasn't asking if she wrote the report. Cruz was asking if she agreed with it. Those are two completely different things. You don't have to author a report to say, yes, I think that's right, or no, I think that went too far. The refusal to answer that simple yes or no question is, in my opinion, more disqualifying than any answer she could have given. Then we get to the white supremacist question, and this is where things get almost surreal. Ms. Abudo defines a white supremacist as someone who hates people based on the color of their skin. Fair enough. But then Cruz points out that the SPLC has labeled Cruz himself, Senator Hawley and Senator Blackburn, as white supremacists. And suddenly Abudo doesn't want to engage with her employer's conclusions anymore. So the SPLC's labels are credible enough to equate the Family Research Council with the Nazis. But when it comes to labeling sitting U.S. senators, she's suddenly not familiar with the exhaustive list. You cannot have it both ways. I also want to address the moment Cruz got personal, because some people will criticize that. Cruz said his dad came from Cuba as an immigrant with nothing. And his point was simple. When you work for an organization that smears conservatives, religious people, and pro-life Americans as white supremacists and Klansmen, you are smearing real people. People who built their lives in this country and hold traditional values. That is not abstract. That is offensive, and it was right to call it out. Now Ms. Abudo did push back. Abudo referenced her own immigrant background and spoke about her commitment to equal justice. And I'm sure Abudo genuinely believes that. But believing in a mission doesn't erase the consequences of the organizations you choose to represent. A judge has to be someone all Americans can trust to be fair, not just the half that shares your ideological background. That's really the bottom line here. Cruz asked one core question throughout that entire hearing. How could a conservative, a religious person, or a pro-life American have any confidence they'd get a fair hearing in Ms. Abudo's courtroom? And that question was never answered. Not once. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Did Ms. Abudo handle it well? Did Cruz go too far? Let's have that conversation. And if you're not subscribed yet, now is the time. I'll see you in the next one.